You know, I used to think the worst pain a woman could feel was catching her husband cheating, but I was wrong. Because nothing cuts deeper than realizing your own family thinks his betrayal is something you should just get over. And years later, after cutting me off and leaving me to rebuild my life alone, those same people showed up at my door begging for my forgiveness. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Voices of Kaitlyn Grit, where I share a new story of strength and rebirth every single day. If you subscribe to the channel and like this video, it would really mean the world to me. Now, let me paint the picture of how it all started. My name is Clara, and for a long time I convinced myself I was lucky, that I had the kind of life other women dreamed about, at least on the outside. But looking back now, I realize I was just very good at ignoring my own instincts. I met Roland when I was 24, during a time when I was still figuring out what good love was supposed to feel like. He was charming in that almost old-fashioned way, opening doors, remembering tiny details I'd mentioned once, calling when he said he would, and after years of casual dating and situationships with men who treated me like an option, that kind of consistency felt like magic. He wasn't the most handsome man in the room, but there was something about his presence, steady, calm, like he could anchor me. And I was a drifter back then, emotionally speaking, still healing from a messy family dynamic and trying to create a life that didn't look like the one I grew up in. My family, my parents, Evelyn and Warren, and my younger sister, Mildred, always had strong opinions about who I dated. I used to say they were protective, but now I know controlling is the more honest word. They approved of Roland immediately, too immediately. And maybe, just maybe, that should have been my first red flag. Because my family never agreed on anything, not politics, not dinner reservations, not whose fault it was when the holidays turned into screaming matches. But Roland, they loved him from day one. He was charming, agreeable, easy to praise. He made them feel important, validated. I thought it was sweet at the time, but in hindsight, men who need to be adored by everyone around them usually aren't doing it for anyone's benefit but their own. Still, I fell hard for him, and when he proposed 2 years later with this quiet, romantic dinner and a trembling smile, I said yes without hesitation. We had a simple wedding, intimate, warm. My parents cried. Mildred hugged me like she genuinely meant it, which was rare between us back then. Everyone said Roland and I were perfect together. I wanted to believe them. For the first few years of our marriage, things were fine, good even, steady in that comfortable way I'd always craved. We got a small house just outside the city. I worked as a project coordinator at a local nonprofit, and Roland worked in sales, long hours, a lot of travel, but supposedly good money. My family practically adopted him. My mother called him more than she called me. My father asked his opinion on business decisions. My sister went to him for advice about her college major. Everyone seemed to orbit around him without me even realizing it. I thought it meant we were building a strong family unit. But now I know that sometimes people don't love you. They love the version of your life that benefits them. And that was red flag number 2. Still, back then, I ignored the shifting dynamic. I ignored the way my mom would pull him aside at family dinners, whispering like they had some private alliance. I ignored how Mildred joked, "Roland's the son Mom always wanted," while everyone laughed, including Roland. I ignored the tightening in my stomach when my father told me, "You're lucky, Clara. Men like him don't come around twice." I ignored it all because I didn't want to be the woman who questioned good things. I didn't want to be the woman who looked ungrateful. And honestly, I didn't want to be alone again. So I built my life around this marriage, around Roland, around my family's approval, around the fantasy that everything was steady and safe. For a while, it even felt true. We had routines, we had inside jokes, we had a life I could picture growing old in. But sometimes the most dangerous thing is the life you settle for when you don't think you deserve better. And slowly, quietly, the cracks started to show. Some of them were small, Roland becoming more secretive with his phone, claiming his late nights were just work, dismissing my concerns with that calm tone that made me feel dramatic for even asking. Some were bigger, my parents shutting down any conversations where I expressed frustration, saying things like, "Marriage isn't easy, sweetheart," or "Don't nitpick a good man." And that's where the story really starts to turn. Because those cracks, they were just the beginning, and I was still trying so hard to hold everything together that I didn't see what was coming next. For a while, I kept telling myself we were happy. And to be fair, there were genuinely good times. Roland and I used to take slow Sunday mornings together, coffee in mismatched mugs, him teasing me about my ridiculous amount of creamer, me pretending not to love his terrible dad jokes. We took weekend trips to small towns, wandered antique stores, cooked easy pasta dinners where we danced barefoot in the kitchen. Moments like that trick you into believing everything is fine. But even during the good years, something inside me never felt fully settled, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And slowly, the subtle red flags became harder to ignore. The first real one happened during our 4th year of marriage. Roland had always traveled for work, but suddenly the trips doubled, sometimes tripled. He'd leave on a Sunday night and come back late Friday exhausted, distracted, almost rehearsed. I'd ask how the trip went, and he'd give the same vague answers every time. Meetings, long days, dead tired. A few times I suggested going with him, just for a weekend, just to get out of town. He shut it down so fast it left me blinking. "No, babe, it's all work. You'd be bored." That tone alone should have been red flag number 3. Not what he said, how he said it, like the conversation was already annoying him. Then there were the emails. He used to leave his laptop open all the time, but around year 5, he suddenly became private, closing screens the minute I walked in, logging out of apps he'd never cared about before, acting irritated if I walked behind him while he worked. One night, I casually joked, "Relax, I'm not trying to break into the Pentagon." And he snapped at me, actually snapped. "Can I just have some damn space, Clara?" I remember standing there in the hallway, holding a basket of laundry, wondering how the man who once looked at me like I was his safe place now looked at me like I was a burden. My mom brushed it off, of course. "Men get stressed, honey," she said. "Don't overthink it." Red flag number 4. Anytime a woman's intuition is dismissed as overthinking, especially by people who claim to love her. I wasn't perfect either, I'll admit that. I got quieter, more closed off. I didn't want to keep bringing up concerns that always turned into me feeling unreasonable, so instead I just stayed busy, focused on work, on trying to create a home that felt warm, even if the warmth wasn't coming from him anymore. But the truth always finds its way through the cracks, and for me, it came on a Wednesday night in May. Roland was supposed to be on a work trip, 3 days in Portland, back Friday. I was cleaning the kitchen, humming along to some old playlist, not thinking about anything at all. When I turned to wipe down the counter, I accidentally bumped his jacket. He'd left it hanging on the back of a chair. His phone slipped out of the pocket and hit the floor. For a moment, I just stared at it. I wasn't the type to snoop. I honestly didn't want problems, and I especially didn't want to find any. But when I picked up the phone, the screen lit up. A text preview. A name I didn't recognize. Lenora. My heart actually stuttered, not because of the name, but because of the message. "Miss you already. Last night was wow." I can't explain the feeling. It wasn't shock. It wasn't even sadness. It was numbness, like my brain disconnected so the rest of me didn't crumble on the spot. I shouldn't have been able to get into his phone, but Roland wasn't as clever as he liked to think. The passcode hadn't changed. Once the phone opened, it didn't take long. A thread of months of messages between him and Lenora, photos, hotel confirmations, plans that overlapped perfectly with his work trips. And the part that broke me? The way he talked to her. Sweet, attentive, the version of him I didn't get anymore. At one point, she texted, "Does she ever get suspicious?" And he replied, "Clara? No, she trusts me too much." That one took the air out of my lungs. I don't know how long I stood there reading, maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. I only snapped out of it when I heard the garage door. He wasn't supposed to be home. He walked in looking startled, almost guilty. "Hey," he said too casually. "I thought you were in Portland," I replied. He hesitated, just a beat, but I caught it. "Oh, the trip got canceled last minute. Didn't I text you?" "No," I said quietly. "You didn't." And something in my tone made him actually look at me. Really look. "What's wrong?" he asked. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just held up the phone. "Who is Lenora?" His face drained of color. And that's when I knew. Before the lies, before the excuses, before the gaslighting that was coming like a tidal wave, I knew the truth. He opened his mouth to speak, but the only words that came out were, "Clara, it's not what you think," which is universal cheater language for "it's exactly what you think." That moment, those 5 seconds, changed everything. Because I realized something terrifying. I didn't know the man standing in front of me. Not really. Not at all. And worse, I had no idea just how deep the betrayal would go. Not just his, but my family's. And that was a blow I never saw coming. When I confronted Roland that night, I expected, I don't know, maybe shame, maybe fear, maybe even a desperate attempt to apologize. What I didn't expect was how quickly he slipped into defense mode. He sat down at the dining table, rubbing his face like I was the one stressing him out. "Clara, listen, things have been tough. We've been distant. I didn't want to hurt you." I remember standing across from him, gripping the back of a chair just to steady myself. "You did hurt me," I said. "Not wanting to doesn't change that you did." He sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "It was just emotional at first. She understood what I was going through." "What you were going through?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "What about what I was going through? Did you ever think of that?" He didn't answer. He just stared down at his hands, silent. And you know what hit me right then? He wasn't sorry. Not really. He was sorry he got caught. That realization was red flag number 5, and it should have been enough. But I'd spent years building a life with him, years believing that stability was the same thing as love. I wasn't ready for my world to collapse in a single night. So I did what I always did. I reached for my family. I called my mom first. My hands were shaking so badly the phone nearly slipped. She answered on the second ring. "Honey, everything okay?" "No," I whispered. "Mom, Roland cheated on me." There was a pause, a long one, too long. Then she sighed, and said, "Clara, are you sure?" That's when the ground under me tilted. "Mom, I saw the messages." "Well," she exhaled heavily, "marriage is complicated. Men make mistakes. Don't do anything rash." Rash. That was the word she used. "Mom, he's been lying to me for months with someone named Lenora?" Another pause. "Clara, I don't think you should make this a big family mess. Why don't you let me talk to Roland first?" I froze. Why would she talk to him before me? That was the moment, right there, when I felt the first breath of betrayal. But it wasn't the last. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed while Roland slept downstairs, telling me he was giving me space, like he was doing me a favor. The next morning, I got a text from my sister, Mildred. "Mom said you're acting dramatic. Are you okay?" It felt like someone poured ice water down my spine. Dramatic? My world was falling apart, and that was the word they landed on? I called Mildred, hoping, praying she'd understand, but she answered, already annoyed. "Look, Clara, Mom and Dad talked to Roland. He said things have been rough between you two." I blinked. He told them before talking to me? Another sigh. Just don't blow up your whole life over one mistake. One mistake. Red flag number 6, when the people who should protect you minimize your pain to keep the peace for themselves. By lunchtime, my parents invited me over for a calm discussion. I shouldn't have gone, but I was vulnerable, confused, and desperate for support. When I walked into their house, Roland was already there, sitting at the kitchen island, drinking coffee like this was some kind of intervention for me. My dad greeted me with a disappointing shake of his head. My mom crossed her arms the way she used to when I misbehaved as a teenager. "Clara," my mom said sternly, "we talked to Roland and he's willing to work on the marriage. You need to meet him halfway." I stared at them, stunned. He cheated. How am I the problem here? My dad's jaw tightened. People make mistakes. Divorce is extreme. Extreme, as if betrayal wasn't. Roland had the nerve to look wounded. "I want to fix this. Please don't throw us away." And my own mother put her hand on him and said, "We believe in you, Roland." I felt like I had left my body. The room felt blurry, small, suffocating. The breaking point came when my dad said, "If you divorce him, don't expect us to support that decision. We're not going to co-sign you giving up on a good man." A good man. I don't know how I held it together. I don't know how I swallowed the scream lodged in my throat. I just stood up and said quietly, "I'm not giving up on a good man. I'm letting go of a man who gave up on me." And I walked out. That was the last day I saw my family for years. The divorce was messy, emotionally, not legally. I had the proof. I had the grounds. Roland tried to guilt me, manipulate me, love bomb me, all of it. But he never apologized. Not once. Not sincerely. My family stopped talking to me altogether. They spent holidays with him, posted pictures with him, called him family. I'd cry in the shower just so nobody would hear. I started therapy. I threw myself into work. I made new routines, new boundaries, new versions of myself. But those first months of isolation, they were brutal. There's nothing lonelier than grieving the living, especially when the living chose someone who hurt you. I felt abandoned, unseen, disposable. But broken doesn't mean destroyed. And slowly, painfully, I found pieces of myself I didn't know I'd lost. The years I spent clawing my way back to myself, the life I built without them, and the day my family came knocking, suddenly desperate to be back in my life. Those first months alone felt like walking barefoot over shattered glass. Every step hurt. Every morning I woke up in a house that suddenly felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories of a marriage I didn't recognize anymore. But there's something strange about pain. If you let it move through you, if you don't run from it, it eventually turns into something else. Strength, clarity, direction. I didn't feel strong at first. I felt hollow. But little by little, things shifted. I started taking evening walks after work just to keep from sitting alone with the silence. I'd plug in a podcast or let music fill my ears, and eventually I found myself breathing deeper, feeling lighter. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned while trying to be the perfect wife. I learned how to make the meals I liked, not just the ones Roland preferred. I booked myself a pottery class on Saturday mornings. I went to therapy every other week and cried in ways I never let myself cry growing up. I stopped trying to be small. And as the months passed, I realized something important. I didn't miss Roland. I missed the version of myself I'd buried to keep the peace. Once I got her back, everything else started falling into place. My career took off in a way I hadn't expected. I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit, at first to distract myself, but eventually because it lit me up again. I got promoted to project lead. Then, 2.5 years after the divorce, I was offered a director role. A director? Me, someone who once felt invisible in her own home. I made a small but beautiful life for myself. A cozy apartment in the city, friends who actually showed up when I needed them, a cat named Lumen who followed me everywhere like she was making sure I never felt abandoned again. I learned how to enjoy being with myself, how to laugh again, how to sleep through the night without replaying the betrayal over and over. And here's the part that still amazes me. I didn't just rebuild, I thrived. Years passed, 4 to be exact, without a word from my family. 4 years of birthdays without them. 4 years of holidays spent in chosen family circles. 4 years of realizing distance can be a kind of peace. I stopped expecting closure. I stopped waiting for apologies. Then, just when my life finally felt steady, my past showed up uninvited. It started with a voicemail from my dad. The first time I'd heard his voice in years. "Clara, your mother's not well. We miss you. We want to talk." I stared at my phone for a long time, the shock settling into my bones. A week later, a message from my sister, Mildred. "I'm sorry. Please call me. We need you." Then they started showing up to my apartment, not barging in, just knocking, leaving handwritten notes. A pie one time, which almost made me laugh because it was my mom's classic olive branch move. They were suddenly gentle, apologetic, small in a way they hadn't been before. And last, Roland reached out. An email, one line. "I heard about your mom. I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." I deleted it without replying. But my family, they didn't stop. Eventually, I agreed to meet them at a cafe, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed closure. I needed to see what they would say when they no longer had control over me, when my life was no longer tied to theirs. When I walked in, my parents stood at the table immediately. My mother looked older, fragile. My father looked exhausted. And Mildred, she looked like someone carrying years of regret. "Clara," my mom whispered, tears already forming, "we made a terrible mistake." My dad nodded, his shoulders sagging. "We chose wrong. We chose him, and we lost you." For a moment, I just stood there, letting the words wash over me. Because the woman I used to be, the one who begged for their approval, would have broken down right there. But the woman I'd become, she didn't dissolve. She didn't rush into their arms. She just breathed. My mother reached for my hand. "Please, sweetheart, please forgive us. We want you back in our lives." I sat down slowly, calm, grounded, because for the first time in my life, I held the power in the room. And that is where part 5 begins. My response, the boundaries I set, the lessons I learned, and the quiet strength of choosing yourself even when forgiveness is on the table. Sitting across from my family in that cafe was surreal. For years, I had imagined this moment, what I'd say, how I'd feel, whether I'd crumble or stay strong. But when the moment actually came, none of that mattered. What mattered was that I finally knew who I was without them. My mother clutched a napkin like it was holding her together. "Clara, please, we were wrong. We were so wrong. I don't know how we let it get that far." My dad swallowed hard. "We should have protected you. We failed you." Mildred wiped her tears openly. "I'm ashamed of how we treated you. I believed what I wanted to believe because it was easier. I'm so sorry." Their words were real. I could see that. They were hurting and genuinely remorseful. But remorse isn't a reset button, and apologies don't erase damage. I let them speak. I let them cry. I let the weight of their regret fill the space between us. When it was finally my turn, I took a breath, steady, deep, and said, "I'm glad you came to your senses. I'm glad you see what happened, but I need you to understand something. I didn't just lose my marriage. I lost my family at the same time, and I had to rebuild myself from nothing." My mom reached toward me again, but I held up my hand gently, not harsh, just firm. "I'm not the same woman you turned your back on," I said, "and I'm not interested in pretending that didn't happen." My dad nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "What do you need from us? Name it and we'll do it." That's when I realized they finally understood. They weren't calling the shots anymore. My boundaries were not optional. My healing was not up for negotiation. "I need space," I said softly. "Real space. We can rebuild, maybe, but it has to be slow. It has to be honest, and it has to be on my terms, not yours." Mildred whispered, "We'll do whatever it takes." I believed her. I believed all of them. But believing someone doesn't mean you let them all the way back in. Not right away. Not without trust rebuilt brick by brick. When we stood to leave, my mother hugged me for the first time in almost 5 years. It wasn't the crushing, possessive hug she used to give. It was careful, respectful, almost grateful. And as I walked back to my car, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook. It's about letting yourself move forward without carrying their mistakes on your back. My takeaways for anyone who needs to hear them. If someone is quick to dismiss your pain, that's not love, that's convenience. Your intuition is never dramatic. It's a compass. Trust it. A partner who isolates you from your own instincts is showing you exactly who they are. Family who stands with your betrayer is choosing comfort, not truth. Let them. You choose you. Rebuilding alone is terrifying, but it's also where your real strength grows. Forgiveness is a boundary, not a door. You decide how much it opens. Standing where I am today, steady, whole, unshakably myself, I can honestly say losing them was the beginning of becoming me. I don't know exactly what my relationship with my family will look like in the future, but I do know this: I'll never again shrink myself for anyone, not for love, not for approval, not for peace. My life is mine now, and I guard it with everything I've learned. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you connected with any part of it, I'd love to hear your own experiences in the comments. Your stories matter. They help other women feel less alone. Don't forget to subscribe and like Voices of Kaitlyn Grit for more stories of resilience, rebirth, and women reclaiming their power. And tomorrow's video? Let's just say it's about a woman who finds strength in the most unexpected place after a betrayal she never saw coming. I'll see you then.